Beginning the NFC West, we begin with the Super Bowl champions, the Los Angeles Rams. The Rams, they're going to have to try to maintain and go all in for another Super Bowl to go back-to-back. They're very much in a similar space to the Bucs. Similar space to the Bucs last year, which is a little bit scary because we saw what happened to the Bucs. They kind of just got unlucky. They got really injured, and a few players, older players, regressed. But we start with the offensive side of the ball. One of the guys that they would love to have back is Odell Beckham Jr. And I think Odell would love to go back. But if you actually look at it reasonably, Odell would be one of the more reasonable players to actually let go of. And why they say that is because Cooper Kupp is there, and Robert Woods is going to be back. So unless you move Robert Woods and then sign Odell, one of those two players, you can't have all of those three receivers. It's going to be very difficult to do that unless one of them takes a significant pay cut. Because I feel like Cooper Kupp, Odell, and Van Jefferson, or Cooper Kupp, Van Jefferson, and Robert Woods, that's a great trio either way. So you probably are not going to have Cooper Kupp, Odell, Robert Woods, and Van Jefferson. If you did, I mean, that would be spectacular, but you're going to have to take chunks out of other positions, right? Because you look at the Rams cap space right now, it's minus $21.6 million. That's a lot. So honestly, one of the more reasonable moves to make would just be not re-signing Odell as much as you would like to have him back. Now, left tackle Andrew Whitworth, I assume is going to retire if he hasn't already. He's currently still on the depth chart. I haven't officially seen anything, I don't think. If anyone knows that officially, let me know. But the offensive line is a big-time concern for this team entering next year. Because given their cap situation and given all the free agents they have, it's going to be tough to really have a good offensive line next year the way it was this year, which was one of the better ones in the league. David Edwards is there for left guard, and Rob Havenstein is there for right tackle. Both those guys are good. Now, Brian Allen and Austin Corbett are both free agents. And then Andrew Whitworth, you've got the age question, right? I would look, if Brian Allen leaves for a little bit of sum of money, I would look to bring back Austin Blythe as your center. That would be because you would probably get him at a 1-year contract, reasonable money, and replace him. And he played well for you guys a couple years ago. Austin Corbett would be nice to have as well, but he's young, he's a guard, a lot of teams need offensive linemen, he's probably going to get signed somewhere with more money, and that's fine. You might have to draft some offensive linemen, but again, they don't have a lot of draft picks. So you're going to have to budget ball your way to some offensive linemen. Now, typically, McVay makes these offensive linemen better in his system. I mentioned Austin Blythe as somebody that would be an option for you at center or guard. I'm going to try to load up the other guards, but yeah, you're going to have to, that's tough, man. And left tackle with Andrew Whitworth is going to be tough. Does Bobby Evans become a starter, or do you sign Joseph Noteboom to become your left tackle? That's going to be tough too. Joseph Noteboom played really well versus the Bucs, by the way. So maybe you go there for cheap at left tackle if Whitworth does not come back. Other alternatives that could be cheap at guard. Duvernay Tardif could probably be pretty cheap. Will Hernandez from the Giants. Kyle Long, who would probably play for a contender. That would make sense. Aaron Stinney of the Bucs. Like a guy like Quentin Spain, who played in a similar system in Cincinnati, wasn't very good, but at least he's starting caliber. So those guys, you could ball in on a budget sort of thing. Tight end, Higbee and Blanton, I think are a nice number 1, number 2. And Bryson Hopkins is a nice little guy as well. Sony Michel's probably going to leave. You just can't afford him. So I think it's going to be Henderson and Akers next year with Jake Funk as probably your number 3 running back. And then defensively, A'Shawn Robinson was a very nice find. He's still signed. Greg Gaines is there. He's still signed. Aaron Donald is still signed. So you're good on the interior. Sebastian Joseph Day is going to leave somewhere else. Now, Von Miller, do you bring him back or do you not bring him back? What I would do is I would let him walk unless he wants to come on a 1-year deal for a little bit. Not a lot of money, just a little bit. If he wants to come back for a 1-year contract or whatever, or maybe you put it on 2 years and you space it out, that sort of way, maybe you do that. But this is the way that I would approach it if I'm the Rams. I would just try to find the next Von Miller at the trade deadline or, throughout the season next year. When you find that you have enough room and you're going for a championship run, try to find the next veteran defensive end, edge rusher that wants to come and go for a championship. That's the ultimate thing with the Rams, is they have that championship pull now that a team like the Bucs did last year. But they're not in as good of a cap spot as the Bucs were last year to retain everybody. You could also, a guy that you could bring back is Dante Fowler. That would make sense to me for like a 1-year cheap contract. There's probably other guys that you could do this with, like Tack McKinley, Ryan Kerrigan. Who else? He's a veteran that would probably try to chase a ring. Who's a guy that could be budget type player? Those are the guys that I really see off the top. And I also think like you've got a couple guys like Terrell Lewis and Justin Hollins could develop into some good players. Leonard Floyd is already a good player, and he would be like your number 1 edge rusher if Vaughn leaves. I just think Vaughn's ultimately going to be too expensive. Kyler Fackrell's another kind of like under, kind of cheap option. Malik Reed is a restricted free agent, so he's not unrestricted. Now, those type of guys that I'm reading off. And inside linebacker could use an upgrade, but it didn't end up killing you this year. I feel like if you could get a veteran, again, cheap, that might not be a bad look. You could also look for the draft to add a little bit of athleticism to that position. Cornerback, Darius Williams looks like he's probably going to go. You would like to have him back with Jalen Ramsey. It does feel like he's going to get a lot of money on the open market, though. So you're going to have to look for some guys that, again, same theme here, probably veteran short-term solutions, and then you got to find a way through it. So Kyle Fuller fits this system well. Maybe you look at somebody like Joe Hayden, who's never won a Super Bowl but has been chasing one. You could look at Xavier Rhodes, Jimmy Smith. These are older guys. Steven Nelson, solid in really every system. Casey Hayward. Like, these guys are going to be probably pretty cheap, short-term solutions, but probably pretty solid, though. Jason McCourty. Who else? Like, if you lose Darius Williams, that's kind of the approach that I would go with. Safety, Nick Scott, Taylor Rapp, Terrell Burgess. I think that's fine. It's not fantastic, but it got the job done this year. Jalen Ramsey and David Long are fine. Obviously, Jalen Ramsey's a superstar. So continuing to, I think through the draft, you probably add a corner or two, and then you look to add a couple you look to add a couple veteran free agents where you can. Edge, corner, maybe linebacker, maybe safety, but you're good on the interior defensive line, and you really need to work on that offensive line. And you got to figure out the wide receiver situation. So, yeah, the Rams are tough because you want to be able to fix your cap, but you also want to be able to compete for a Super Bowl. And I think the Rams, they've just been able to do this year in and year out, where they have these superstars that are the foundation of their roster. Cooper Kupp, Aaron Donald, Matthew Stafford now, Leonard Floyd on the edge, Jalen Ramsey at corner. These are your foundational pieces, and then you build the rest. You find the budget free agents, the 1-year contract guys like the Ashawn Robinsons of the world, and then you also draft a couple contributors each and every year. So that's the way I see the Rams. Maybe, I'm not sure what Johnny Hecker's contract's like, but you could also maybe, move on from Johnny Hecker. As good as he is, he might not be worth paying a punter as much as he's probably making at this point. Although I don't have no real knowledge of what he actually is making, but I assume it's quite a bit. So that's the Rams. The Seattle Seahawks. So the Seahawks are next in the NFC West, and the Seattle Seahawks are a football team that they need to figure out what Russell Wilson is doing first. First and foremost, what is Russell Wilson doing? And then you go from there, right? So Russell Wilson, he's back. Okay, we've got a chance. Dwayne Brown, come on back. If Russell Wilson's gone, if you're trading him, and it appears that he'll be back, but let's say he's gone, I wouldn't bring back Dwayne Brown. What's the point? He's an older tackle. Just let him go. Now, if Russell Wilson stays, Dwayne Brown coming back makes sense. I think the offensive line actually hasn't been bad. I think you could use a right tackle and you could use a center maybe upgrade, but the guard position is quite good for you. And if Dwayne Brown's back, he's a good left tackle for as long as he wants to play. Finding a number 3 receiver is still a priority. I feel like looking at the draft could be that, where you go with that. But Dwayne Eskridge, you drafted in the 2nd round last year. So do you spend another high priority pick on wide receiver? Probably not, right? Because you spent a lot of them lately. But DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett are both your number 1 and number 2, one of the best duos in the league. And Dwayne Eskridge, you hope to be that number 3. Maybe you bring in a low-key veteran in the same vein of a Freddie Swain that you already have, that can maybe compete with Eskridge as your number 3 receiver. Maybe I don't know if he's still playing, but like Danny Amendola, just a random name, but somebody like that. Then tight end, I don't know if they want to bring back Gerald Everett. I don't really see the need to press to get him back. I think he's fine. He'd be nice to have back. I don't think he's a difference maker. Same with Rashad Penny. Rashad Penny, it would be nice to have him back. I don't think you need to have him back, right? Tight end and running back, especially in this team and this offense, they're not massive needs. I'd rather build my offensive line and find, and add to your defense, right? And they don't got a lot of salary cap here. So you're looking at the defensive line. I do wish they had a difference maker up front on the defensive line. It's going to be hard for them to find that. They've got a lot of solid players. Kerry Hyder, Poona Ford, Carlos Dunlap, Benson Mayowa, LJ Collier. These guys, they're okay. Some of them are above average. Kerry Hyder, Carlos Dunlap, Poona Ford, above average, but they're not fantastic. So a difference-making D-end, like your new Cliff Averill, would be nice to have. I just don't know if you have the money to do that right now. You could, I guess. You do have $35 million. I thought it was less for some reason, but you could. It's going to be interesting to see what they try to do. But I think I'm still upset that they're still keeping Pete Carroll around. I just want side point. I still think that they should have moved on from Pete Carroll if they're going to bring back Russell Wilson. So the secondary, re-sign Quandre Diggs, re-sign DJ Reed, find new perimeter corners. Maybe you go with JC Jackson. And this is going to be the interesting thing. Do they spend a lot of money on corner or pass rusher? Personally, I'd rather spend it on a pass rusher. But given the age of JC Jackson and Carlton Davis, if they could get one of those guys, I would like to do that over a lot of the pass rushers because a lot of the pass rushers are a little bit older. But Reed and Diggs are probably your two biggest free agent signings that you need as your nickel and your safety, and then Dwayne Brown as your left tackle. Re-sign Ethan Pochich as your center. I would look to spend most of my money on the defense because I don't think they need a ton on offense. They really don't need a ton on offense because you've got Russell Wilson. You've got a killer wide receiver duo. Maybe you draft a running back or you bring back Rashad Penny on a cheap contract. That's your number one running back, okay? You re-sign Ethan Pochich and Dwayne Brown at offensive line, and your offensive line's okay, right? It's not terrible. You find a veteran wide receiver 3 that can compete with Eskridge. Your defense, you need a killer off the edge to pair with Kerry Hyder and Poona Ford. And that's where I'd spend my money, because the Seahawks have always been better with pass rushers, right? So try to get an Ogba or a Reddick or even a Chandler Jones. You could get a Chandler Jones. This is a team that I would look to be in the market for some of the veteran pass rushers as well. The Von Millers. I would be in the market for that because you've got Russell Wilson, who's not exactly young, right? So I would look to bring in those guys. I wouldn't just, in the last couple of years, they've been sort of adding like the veteran role players. I'd be looking to add one stud. And there's a few. Like there's about 5 on the market this offseason that would work in that regard. As I brought up, Ogba, Reddick, Chandler Jones, Von Miller. These guys are all really good players. Randy Gregory is a great fit. Randy Gregory would make maybe the most sense. And then, hey, maybe you're in the J.C. Jackson market, but don't overspend. And try to upgrade that corner position, probably a little bit through the draft. Re-sign Reed, re-sign Diggs. But maybe you try to entice a Stephon Gilmore, veteran corner, to be your number one. Maybe you try to bring in a Kyle Fuller or veterans like this, right? I think that the Seahawks could easily reform a team if they just got, a pass rusher and a number one corner. And I know that's a lot. They would be a playoff team with Russell Wilson. And I don't think that is crazy to say at all. I don't think that's crazy to say at all. So, Seattle, you have a very interesting free agency ahead of you. Your front office has missed quite a bit lately, but if they can hit this offseason, they might have something. The Arizona Cardinals are next. Thank you, Jake, by the way, for the super chat. He says, great live so far. Keep killing it. Thank you, Jake. Appreciate the super chat, man. Thank you so much. All right, the Arizona Cardinals. The Arizona Cardinals have some drama on their hands with Kyler Murray. So how do we make Kyler Murray happy? That's going to be interesting. Christian Kirk is a free agent. Does re-signing Christian Kirk help? I don't know. I don't think so. I think you move on from Christian Kirk. I wouldn't overspend for him. AJ Green, maybe you bring him back on a cheap 1-year contract. Sure, why not? He was a nice number 4, number 3 option. Sure. You could trade Andy Isabella for a late pick. Rondell Moore looks to be a number 3, maybe a number 2 in this league. Given their contract and given their salary cap space, they don't have a lot of money. So Kirk is gone. Green might be gone, but D-Hop and Rondell Moore are going to be there. Offensive line, you got your left tackle, DJ Humphries. Left guard, Justin Pugh's fine. Maybe you move on from him, given his contract. Rodney Hudson at center. Right tackle and right guard are a little bit questionable. Maybe you look to draft the right side of your offensive line to protect Kyler Murray. Zach Ertz you'd like to have back, although he might be a bit pricey given your cap situation. But he was a really nice fit in this offense that I thought played very well for you. So if you could bring him or AJ Green back, I'd prefer Zach Ertz. Running back situation, it's going to be tough to retain both Chase Edmonds and James Conner. I thought James Conner was really good for you last year. But if I was to choose one for the future, I would choose Chase Edmonds and I would draft a running back to play the James Conner role. That's just my opinion. But James Conner was really good. I think he's going to be more expensive, though, than Edmonds. And then you look at defense. The interior defensive line could use an upgrade beside J.J. Watt and some depth. You know, use a little bit of size, use a little bit of, run defense. Maybe you bring back Calais Campbell. I brought that up as a prediction. You could bring in, Brandon Williams, a big sucker in the middle. Chandler Jones is a free agent. He's probably going to go because he's just going to be too expensive. Your linebacker position, maybe you move on from Jordan Hicks, you trade him or you cut him. Zaven Collins and Isaiah Simmons are your future at the linebacker position. Use them. Marcus Golden is an underrated player. Devin Kennard is a decent role player, but you need to find another edge player, and that's probably going to come through the draft. Corners are definitely a need. If you could somehow land a man coverage corner like Carlton Davis or JC Jackson, go ahead and do it. I just don't know if you'll have enough money to do so. But some under-the-radar names could be maybe guys like, let's go with Mike Hughes, under the radar. Who else? Hey, a veteran like Jason McCourty might help you out. Keep scrolling. Anthony Everett from the Ravens. These guys make sense to me. I feel like I had another name that I wanted them to sign, but I couldn't remember. Malcolm Butler is apparently coming back to the NFL. I don't think it's going to be with Arizona, though. Byron Murphy is a good nickel corner. Budda Baker's a good safety. You could use an upgrade opposite Budda Baker, but the Thompsons aren't terrible. So, looking at this team, I think the priority is right tackle and right side of the offensive line. Interior presence on the D. Edge presence to replace Chandler Jones, and cornerback. And those are the kind of the positions that I see the most. It would be nice to have another receiver. It's just going to be hard because that's going to have to come through the draft if you do find another one, just because the money situation. So the Cardinals, it's going to be tough for them to be better than they were last year. And with this whole Kyler Murray stuff, it's going to be, overcoming that's also going to be difficult, but it's not impossible. They just got to make the right moves. Maybe don't go as hard and heavy for the big names as he did last year and try to find the diamonds in the rough and try to add more free agents rather than free agents for a lot of money. And the final team for our NFL free agency plans is the San Francisco 49ers. The team that I believe is in a very good spot entering the future. The team of the future in the NFC, as I've stated. Kyle Shanahan's team, John Lynch. Now, something that's going to be very helpful for the 49ers is, if they don't get Tom Brady, that is, going young at the quarterback position is going to allow them to go cheap at the quarterback position, which might be hugely helpful. As helpful as it is to just have a good quarterback, it might be to have a quarterback that is cheap. So having Trey Lance and trading Jimmy Garoppolo, you're getting rid of $25 million this year. And that's going to open up space. What's that space going to allow you to do? It's going to allow you to re-sign Kwan Williams and Lincoln Tomlinson, your two biggest free agents. It's going to allow you to re-sign DJ Jones and maybe Jaquiski Tart if you like, but probably Arden Key as well. They're going to get rid of D Ford to open up some cap space. That's cool. I would like for them to keep DJ Jones. I'd like for them to keep Arden Key. I'd like for them to keep Kwan Williams for sure on the defensive side of the football. I would like for them to sign a cornerback. Hopefully, you know what they should do? They should bring back, I know that a lot of 49ers fans might be frustrated with this, but they should try to bring back Jason Verrett on a 1-year low-money contract and then sign Stephon Gilmore or Kyle Fuller or Xavier Rhodes even, or Casey Hayward, one of these players. Okay, veteran, number one corner, and put them with Kwan Williams and who's the other one? Emmanuel Mosley, and then you also got Ambry Thomas. So that would be a good corner group. You could draft a safety if you like, if you don't want to re-sign Jaquiski Tart. He's a good player. He's not like an irreplaceable player, though. Your linebacker position is good. Samson Ebukam's nice. Eric Armstead's still there. Obviously, Nick Bosa. Charles Omenihu's solid. You've got a lot of still solid depth pieces, but I think the solid depth pieces you need to retain are Probably Arden Key is more likely than DJ Jones, but DJ Jones would be nice to have back. And then offensively, I think your receiver position is good. Maybe you draft one with like a later pick, because I think Ayuk, Debo, and Jennings as your 1, 2, 3, that's solid. You could do better, but like there's no need to spend money on it. Tomlinson, bring him back. Then you solidify your offensive line. You've got McGlinchey coming back at right tackle. Tom Compton will probably be gone somewhere else. It would be nice to add depth to the offensive line, but you did spend a second-round pick on Aaron Banks, I believe. So that's some depth right there. And running back, I think they'll draft. I think they'll draft a running back along with Elijah Mitchell. I don't think Alex Mack is going to retire quite yet. Some alternatives. So if they leave, let's see. I think a lot of the Niners is just going to be about retaining a lot of their players and then adding probably like the big free agent ticket will probably be a corner. But you look at the center position, if Mack leaves, I don't think they'll go with Ryan Jensen. I think it would be more so in the lane of like Matt Paredes or Brian Allen possibly. I think Jensen will just be too expensive. I think Mack's going to stay one more year, or they'll draft one. And then guard, if Tomlinson leaves, again, draft's a possibility, but they could go with, let's see, anybody like Corbett could be somebody they go with. Norwell. Maybe Alex Kappa, but who else is there? James Daniels would be awesome, but he's going to be expensive. Connor Williams, maybe. Maybe they just re-signed Tom Compton. I don't know. He could play guard for them, to be honest. So, yeah, I think the Niners are in a good spot. I think they're just going to try to retain their primary important priority free agents and add to the secondary. And that's pretty much it. I mean, there's not a lot that has to be done here. I think the number one thing I'd like to see is for them to get a number one corner. And I think that would just add so much flexibility to their defensive scheme and what DeMeco Ryans can do. And I'd like for them to keep Arden Key and DJ Jones and Kwan Williams and Lincoln Tomlinson. And then running back, I think could use an upgrade, but I wouldn't spend money on it in free agency. I'd probably just draft. Unless they trade for Saquon or something like that, which don't count that out, which would be amazing. If they could trade for Saquon, I would do it. But running back, you could get in the draft, like in the fourth round, and pair a guy with Elijah Mitchell. I don't think they're going to bring Raheem Mostert back just because he's older and he'll probably get more money elsewhere, to be honest with you. But if they get him on a 1-year like short contract, they could do that as well. So that's the 49ers, guys. And those are your free agency plans for every single team in the